Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, October 14th, 2022. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the two best friends anyone could ask for, Tyler Snyder, Cody Roadcap in the house. How you guys doing here?
Feeling old.
I feel that.
I'm a little empty on the inside. It's Titans bye week. Every week, the work week isn't that bad because I can look forward to Sunday and seeing my Titans play. I don't have that this week. I'm just empty.
And by the way, you're feeling old because happy birthday, Cody, on the day of recording. So it's technically the day before this podcast is released. But yes, today on the show, we have a little bit of NFL news and notes to cover, and then we're going to break down every week 6 game besides those bye week teams. The Titans are one of them. We'll talk about them before we go into our week 6 preview. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at thecouchgms. Join our Discord chat. The link is in the description of the video or podcast you are watching. All right, let's quickly hit some NFL news. All right, well, only one piece of news here for NFL news, and it has to do with Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams. If you have not seen the video of him post-game, I think you're hiding under a rock or just are taking a social media cleanse or something, because it's been everywhere. Davante Adams is being charged with a city ordinance violation for pushing a credentialed member of the stadium staff after the game when he was walking into the tunnel. This is lower than a misdemeanor, so it is a $252,000 fine or 180 days in jail or both. This seems to have blossomed out of control more and more every single day since it happened. But what are your guys' thoughts here quick?
Well, I think we're going to talk about it. It's been talked about a lot, whether the charges were needed or whatnot. And I just want to start and say what Davante Adams did by shoving the guy was inappropriate, not called for, was not needed. But if you take a step back and put yourself in his shoes, he just, on the third down play, he had a ball that was very bang across the side. It was called a catch, then overturned. On the fourth down play, him and Hunter Renfrow collided. Very heated in a game that they should have kicked the extra point to tie. They lost by 1 point. This is now the first time since 2018 that he's been on a team that has lost 4 games in a season. We're going into week 6. So a lot of emotions going through. And if you watch the video, his head is down. He's walking towards the tunnel. And the cameraman runs in front of him. I'm not saying Davante Adams shoving the guy was appropriate, but you can kind of see the reaction, almost like a startled, or what is this guy doing? Maybe he thinks he's running at him because, again, his head was down. And the tunnel is supposed to be a safe place after the game for players. Again, super unfortunate it happens. Davante has apologized. We'll see what comes out of this. But the big thing in terms of fantasy we have to look out for is whether you think it's worth it or not. Davante will most likely be suspended at least 1 game for this. And that means he will not be available this week because of bye, and most likely not available next week due to suspension.
I think it's ridiculous. Look, I've been pushed over enough times to say that I would not react this way. Again, it was uncalled for. It was ridiculous, but there's other ways you can settle this. I mean, look, you got pushed. He didn't come over and punch him in the face. He didn't, I don't think he did anything that egregious. It was just unnecessary. It happens. I mean, you're working as a camera guy on the field of an NFL game. We see those guys get knocked over and hit way harder on a daily basis. They sign up for that risk, and now you're getting pushed softly and taking it out. I don't know. To me, it seems like a hunt for money, but I can't say for sure. It's not my place to say. I don't like it, but we got to deal with what we can now. If you're a Davante Adams owner, obviously this is frustrating because now you might be losing out on one of your best players in fantasy over something stupid that shouldn't be happening. Just try to monitor it closely and make sure you do have a backup plan in place in case he does end up getting suspended.
Yeah, there is nothing in place yet when it comes to suspensions or fines, so we'll find out more as we go on in the next few weeks. But I think that wraps up the Davante Adams talk for now. Why don't we jump into every single game with our Week 6 preview? And as I mentioned at the top, first week for bye weeks, and the Las Vegas Raiders and Davante Adams are one of those, so he is not available this week regardless of any kind of suspension status. The Tennessee Titans are another team, Houston Texans, and Detroit Lions. They're the 4 teams that are on bye this week, and there's no 9:30 game in London either, so no worries about having to get up early there West Coast to try to get some people in and out of your lineup. But we have some 1 o'clock games here. We'll start off the San Francisco 49ers traveling east at 1 o'clock to the Atlanta Falcons. Had to mention that one before Cody could. Why don't we start with the 49ers side? No real offensive injuries, but it looks like there's some defensive injuries to talk about.
Yeah, and since you had to call that across for me before, I'm going to give a hot take before Tyler, if it's even a hot take. But this is the George Kittle breakout game. I'm calling it now.
Ooh.
We're all waiting for it, but this is the George Kittle breakout game. The Falcons are a bottom 10 team against fantasy tight ends. Jimmy Garoppolo is starting to find his groove. 49ers are starting to be a team that we were hoping they would be with Trey Lance, but showing glimpses of why this team went to the NFC Championship last year. Excuse me. You are right, though. They are banged up along the defensive line, especially with Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw. They were all DNPs. We'll have to see if any of them goes. Luckily, though, they are playing the Falcons, so it's not a huge offensive powerhouse that you have to be worried about that I think this defense can prevail. But George Kittle, he's a guy I'm playing anywhere I can and hopefully finally starting to see some return of investment.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a bad option. But the other guys to look at, I mean, you got Deebo Samuel. This is a good matchup for the 49ers. So you got Deebo Samuel. You're obviously going to play him. Brandon Ayuk might be a potential flex play just based off the matchup. I know he's been a little lackluster so far this season, but not a bad play this week. And Jimmy Garoppolo, good streaming option this week. If you have been kind of playing the waiver wire for quarterbacks, I know I have in a couple leagues because of Russ not cooking and Dak getting injured. This isn't a bad time to stream Jimmy Garoppolo. You should be able to pick him up, start him this week, and he should be just fine for you. Outside of those guys, probably not starting it. I mean, you got Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson. You're starting Jeff Wilson as well.
Wilson? Yeah.
I forgot about the running back position. Yes.
A lot of
sorry,
people
I
have,
hate
so
the
it's
running
okay.
back position. But yeah, outside of those guys, I think that's just about it for the 49ers.
Yeah, and then we'll move on to the Falcons side of the ball where you can kind of forget about the running back position, I think. Like, Algier is the starting running back. He's still splitting. The 49ers as a defense are strong. I think I'm still trying to avoid it there. Drake London, I think, is somebody that's a great question this week because, again, bad matchup. They have not been passing the ball much at all. They've been really focusing on the run the last few weeks, and he's kind of disappeared in that. But now, especially with 4 teams on bye, some big name receivers like Davante Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown not playing, is he somebody who you might have to play in your flex?
I hope
in our league of record, I'm starting Drake London, and I'm not happy about it. I wish I could replace him. I don't want to have him in my starting lineup, but I also don't want to have Allen Robinson in my starting lineup. I have guys on bye, and the free agents out there just aren't pretty. So yeah, I have him in my lineup. I don't like it. Drake London right now, if you are listening, is a good buy low candidate. I know we didn't mention in the last podcast, but Falcons haven't been throwing lately. That'll come around. They will start throwing again, and they have been in some really rough matchups these past couple of weeks. This was yet another one. It's a really good defense, so Drake London's probably going to get shut down again. Go get London while he's super cheap, while people are giving up on him. You won't have to give up much to get him if you wait till after this week, but he'll be a solid piece for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and
definitely going out there and trying to say he's going to have a bad week, but you're forced to start him anyway. That's tough.
Yeah, just looking at our league of record team, and you can call me a homer if you want, but I would actually go ahead and pick up Romeo Doubs and play him over Drake London this week. Maybe you call me a homer. He is a guy that is available in our league of record still, and he gets the New York Jets, and we can talk about that matchup. Right now, it's another 1 o'clock game. Now, you could be scared because you've seen Aaron Rodgers hit the injury report with his thumb. He went from DNP Wednesday to a full participant on Thursday. He said he's good to go. Not too worried about it. And then the other rookie, Christian Watson, he is DNP after pulling his hamstring over in London. He's probably not going to go this week. But on the Packers side, so I like Romeo Doubs in this matchup. Not a huge fan of actually playing Aaron Rodgers because he's just been a little bit up and down, and they have been playing down to their opponents. But I think the running backs both are in play this week for the Green Bay Packers.
All right, so Mr. Packers expert, I know you're liking Romeo Doubs, but it seems like the guy that people have been the most confident in starting at that wide receiver group is Alan Lazard. So is it both, or is it just Doubs now?
No, I think you're gonna go back and forth between Lazard and Doubs. It's like the poor man's Metcalf or Lockett. Like, which one is it going to be this week? Which one's going to catch the touchdown? Because let's be honest, neither of them are going to be 10 target, 10 catches guys. They're going to come around between 4 to 6 catches, and you're going to hope they get into the end zone. I like Doubs a little bit better this week because I think they're going to match up Sauce Gardner, the rookie, on Lazard a little bit and try to take him away and make the rookies beat him. So that's why I'm leaning Doubs. But I think those both guys are borderline flexes each and every week, especially as we approach more and more buys.
All right, then we can move on to the Jets side of the ball, where I think there was a bit of a Breece Hall breakout happening still here. He had a pretty good week last week, so I think he's probably your start here out of the Jets.
For sure.
Any of the receivers in this mess that you would still go with? Is it kind of just too spread out still? Is Corey Davis still taking way too much?
Corey
Garrett
Davis
Wilson
has been rosterable. Like, honestly, like, still nobody's picking up Corey Davis, but every week Davis does enough to be fantasy relevant. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of like a split team. If the Jets are going to put up 40 points like they did last week, then yeah, absolutely start whoever you need to, because they're all going to get their touches. But are we really trusting Zach Wilson is like, he's got it now? Are we really trusting, Breece Hall and Michael Carter both to be efficient on a weekly basis? Are we really trusting these receivers when you have Elijah Moore, you have Corey Davis, like you have so many mouths to feed? Like, who are we really trusting here?
For me,
That's why I think I'm down to literally just Breece Hall.
Breece Hall is the running back. I'd take him over Michael Carter. I think he's approaching, if not already at the start every week kind of player, just because he's now superseded Carter in snap percentage. He's getting targets. He had almost 200 scrimmage yards last week. And if you look at that game, they did put up 40 points, but that was a game they actually didn't. They scored 21 in the fourth quarter, so it was kind of close. So it wasn't like a blowout from the beginning, and then they just started running the ball at the end. And then for me, the wide receivers, I would still say Garrett Wilson is number 1, Elijah Moore is 2, and Corey Davis is 3. That's how I would rank them. And I think, honestly, in this matchup, we've seen from the Packers for weeks now, they are playing so soft. They're playing such like afraid of getting beat that they're just letting guys catch the ball for 5 yards, 6 yards to come back and make a tackle. Like the Jets are going to score points. And I'll give you surprising stats. According to PFF, the number 2 quarterback when having a clean pocket this year, it's not Tom Brady. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Lamar Jackson. It's Zach Wilson. So from a clean pocket with an offensive line that is getting healthier, he can put up points, especially against.
Size.
I was gonna say that's sample size. He's played 1 game.
2
He's
games.
played 3.
Sorry, 2.
Has he really played 3 already? I feel like it's
No,
only
he
been
came
2.
back in 4. Wait, week 4. It was week 4 and 5. It was 2. You're right.
You can say small sample size, but it's still an impressive stat. That's not where we would for reference. Aaron Rodgers is down at 19. Obviously, it's a lot bigger sample size, but he is playing well when the pocket is clean. Packers have a decent pass rush, but they're playing so soft they'll get the ball out quick. The Jets are a scary matchup. Like, they're 7-point underdogs, but they're a team that I would not be surprised they walk into Lambeau and beat the Packers this week.
I mean, and there's a difference, though. Like, we're talking in fantasy, though. Like, I get it. I think Garrett Wilson's probably the most talented. He's probably the person who'd be most likely to start in fantasy, but I don't want to, like Tyler, because, like, the ball's being spread out so much. Like, Corey Davis is technically getting more yards per catch than him. They're getting the same amount of targets. Same with Elijah Moore. You have 2 tight ends in there, Conklin and Uzama, who are both getting targets. They're giving targets to the running backs, both of them. I think Jeff Smith is another tight end in there. Braxton Berrios is still there. Like, they're literally throwing the ball to 9-10 different guys every single week. It's hard for anybody to get more than 5 targets in that. And I would like to think, unless I'm desperate in a bye week or an injury, that I'm going to start a wide receiver is going to get me at least 6 or more targets.
We'll just have to agree to disagree on Garrett Wilson. But that's why there's 3 of us. So if you like one person's take, you can follow their advice. And if you think one person's an idiot like myself, you can listen to George because he'll probably be right more than I am. But the next matchup is the New England Patriots versus the Cleveland Browns. And I feel like this one's a little bit more straightforward on who we're playing and who we're not. And on the Patriots side, it's Ramondre Stevenson with Damian Harrison now expected to be out. That's a must start. And then there's really not anyone on the wide receiver. If you're going to make a deep, you're going to go with Jacoby Myers, but he's limited in practice. So is Nelson Aguilar. But I do want to ask you guys, Mac Jones has returned to practice in a limited basis. If he is back out there, do you think Myers is more valuable or less valuable than he was with Bailey Zappi? I want to say Zappi so bad.
Zappy sounds funnier, so I definitely want to say Zappy. But I think he's about equal, honestly. I don't think we got to be careful here. My biggest thing is I've heard somebody try to trade me Cooper Rush. I've seen someone try to trade me Bailey Zappi in dynasty leagues because they're like, he's the guy of the future. Don't you see how well he's playing? You got to be careful of these flash in the pan backup quarterbacks. I think George said it best, which I've never said before in my life, so mark this moment down. But I think George said it best the other day when he was saying, like, this reminds me a lot of Gardner Minshew. It's a guy who came out and was just on fire, and you're like, wow, this is the guy of the future. And as soon as he became a starter, you're like, you know what? Maybe he is mediocre. Cooper Rush and Bailey Zappi are both guys who have 0 tape on them. So they came out and they were able to beat defenses because they didn't know how to game plan against them. And you got to look at Zappi played against the Lions, whose defense was ranked dead last. So, of course, he's going to be performing well. I think they're both going to be equal. I don't think Mac Jones is playing up to par this season. I think Mac Jones is obviously the better quarterback, but I don't think he's been playing up to par. But even with him not playing as well, I don't see how the changing quarterback really affects Jacoby Myers that much either way. Jacoby Myers is a flex play if you need to based off matchup. Otherwise, you're not starting Jacoby Myers on a weekly basis anyway.
Yeah, it's not exactly the ideal matchup, but if you're in a bye week situation, if you're forced to play Garrett Wilson, I actually am going to go out there on a limb and say I like playing Jacoby Myers better than Garrett Wilson. That might be my hot take of the week. But anyway, it's mostly because of volume.
I agree.
And
with
Myers has had a good week with Jones and Zappi, so I don't think I'm with Tyler on. I think it's pretty even with him, depending on who's at quarterback. Doesn't matter.
Y'all got to stop agreeing with me. This is weird. I'm the hot takes guy.
You gave me the biggest compliment I think you've ever given me on air. Just like 5 seconds
on
ago.
air.
So I have to give you
life.
a little bit of love.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, it might be in life too. You're right.
Don't get used to it.
All right, but let's
move on to the other side. We got the Browns. So I read an article earlier this week that said sell high on Nick Chubb. They say that Nick Chubb is performing way above expectations. Sell him while you can, because they just expect him to go downhill from here. Not go downhill, but not be able to stay up to the volume he's at. Do you guys agree or disagree with that statement?
So I'll say this. Sell depending on what you're upgrading to. Don't just sell him to sell him, but you have to expect there will be some sort of touchdown regression coming in the second half of the season. He is putting up touchdowns at an unbelievable rate to start the season. So if you can capitalize on that and, maybe upgrade to a Derrick Henry or an Austin Eckler or someone like those who get the volume, or Eckler is on a better offense, Henry gets the most touches of anybody, and he hasn't even started playing in December yet when he just balls out. So, those are the kind of trades I'm thinking of. I'm not trading, Nick Chubb for, I probably wouldn't even trade him for Jonathan Taylor straight up, because the Colts offensive line has been abysmal to start the season. They cannot stay healthy. And I even said I wouldn't trade Travis Kelce for Jonathan Taylor. I don't think I would do Nick Chubb for Jonathan Taylor straight up. But if I can go and get like an elite guy that I know is going to get the opportunities, like a Derrick Henry, that would be like the kind of deal that's tempting for me. But take advantage of getting Nick Chubb in the second round and enjoy it. Like, don't force your way to move on from him. Just know that the touchdowns might fall off a little bit.
I want to give you a hypothetical because you're throwing out potential trades. Saquon Barkley. He's technically the one guy who's keeping up with Chubb in points. Do you think he's real enough that you would do that one for one?
No.
I'd
Okay.
rather have Chubb. Barkley's not.
I'd rather have Chubb
trustworthy.
too.
Me too. I just
Because-
wanted to see if there was any difference in the opinion there.
No, and Barkley's the same thing. Like, he's another guy you might want to consider selling high on, but what are you going to sell him for is another big question, or just relish in the fact that you got him at the end of the second round. You already had a number 1 pick. I know in our league of record, he's paired with Derrick Henry. Like, who are you going to trade Saquon Barkley for? Like, you have a dynamic running back duo. Maybe you got a Cooper Kupp and you still have Saquon Barkley. Like, that's good value. There's a fine balance between trading to make your team better and then trading just to trade because you get bored or you want to do something. And these guys at the top, we've seen how important the running back position is, and a lot of the top guys aren't performing to where they're at. So there's not a lot of guys that you should be out there chasing.
All right. Well, I think we spent enough time on Nick Chubb. So the other guys, I'm just going to name them. I want you to say yes or no on if you would start them or not. Cool?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Kareem Hunt.
No.
Flex option.
All
Patriots
right.
are top 8
Amari
against
Cooper.
the run. Yes.
Yes.
David Njoku.
No.
Dartboard.
Sure. I mean,
If you are
tight
sh-
ends.
I feel like you can do worse than Njoku, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to think Darren Waller's on bye. So Waller.
Darren
owners
Waller's
might
on
need
bye.
somebody
TJ
else.
Hawkinson's on bye. So David Njoku is probably going to be a top 12 tight end this week. So I'm flipping. That's a yes.
Okay.
All right, and if you're streaming quarterbacks, you go in Jacoby Brissett. He has been putting up points this season, kind of like
No.
a Geno Smith. Is he a guy that you play but not happy about? Or flat
Not
out
in
no?
this matchup, no.
Not in this matchup. That is fair enough. I agree with that. Any other guys you would like to throw out as potentials? Or are we just saying that's it for the Browns?
I think that's it for the Browns. I'm not going to say the other receivers' names. It's not worth it. I can move us on then to a divisional matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. We did just talk a little bit about Jonathan Taylor in that last little segment there. And he did not practice on Wednesday, but there is optimism that he is going to be back out there this week. I do believe he was on the practice field on Thursday. We just didn't quite get the actual official report. I mean, I don't see any reason why you can't just throw him right back into your lineup. I think he's going to be a lot like those top running backs like Christian McCaffrey. If he's out there, you're playing him because you think he's going to get volume. Is there any pushback on that?
No. There's not enough good running backs to not play to wait a week on Jonathan Taylor. I know he hasn't been performing well, but yeah, Taylor, if he's out there, he's in your lineup.
Can we just can I pause for 1 sec? The Colts schedule is crazy. So they had Texans week 1, Jags week 2. So they start with 2 divisional matchups. Then they get the Chiefs, so that's a break. But then they get the Titans, another divisional matchup. That's 3. Then they got the Broncos, so they got a break. Then they have the Jags this week, and then the Titans next week. That's 5 of their 6 divisional opponents gone before the first half of the season. And then they don't play another divisional game until the last week of the season against the Texans. That's a weird schedule. I'm sorry. I really haven't looked at the Colts schedule because, I don't
You're
like
a
the
Titans
Colts.
fan.
But yeah, so obviously I didn't look at it. But that's a weird schedule, like to have that many divisional games like bunched in the beginning. And it's bad for them because, I mean,
They
they're
start
at
slow.
their worst right now. So
I just think it's also weird.
Yikes.
Like you flip it to, I mean, I know the NFC East pretty much the best being an Eagles fan. And there's only been 2 NFC East games like against teams against each other the entire season so far, as opposed to the Colts basically finished their entire divisional slate. That's just so strange. You're right.
it's definitely weird. But yeah, anyway, going back to the Colts. So they do historically play bad against the Jaguars, and the Jaguars defense is actually pretty good this season. So I would be a little worried about your Colts, but if you have Michael Pittman, I feel like you're starting him. He hasn't been thrilling, but outside of like week 1 where he got like 87 targets, but he hasn't been thrilling. But I feel like he's good enough where what are your other options that you're able to bench him? I just don't see it. If you're a Jonathan Taylor owner and he's good to go, you're playing Jonathan Taylor. You can't wait a week on him. He's the number 1 overall pick, most likely. So you can't wait. Outside of those guys, I mean, the tight
That's it.
ends are both on the dartboard, but I don't like either one of them.
I'm
So
out on those guys.
Oh.
I'll
yeah,
narrow
that's it.
the tight end board down. Those are the only 2 Colts I'm playing. And if Taylor doesn't go, it's only Michael Pittman just because he gets volume. It's not the best play, but you're going to start him just based on probably what your lineup looks like. But the Jaguars defense is my stream of the week on the article in the Couch GMs.com. Like you mentioned, they're a top 7 defense already. Colts can't block. Matt Ryan's a turnover machine. So I really do like playing the Jags defense this week. And I think it'll be a bounce back week for Christian Kirk as well. He had a pretty big dip in what we were expecting in production last week. So I think he'll bounce back a little bit this week as well. But my question for you guys is, maybe it's just me, but there does seem to be a little bit of trending more into some Travis Etienne opportunities. Not saying he's taking over from the James Robinson, but it's making playing either of them a little bit more sketchy. What are your guys' thoughts?
I agree, and I feel like I was all in on James Robinson as of like 2 weeks ago, and then James Robinson ran into the Eagles defense, and then apparently the Texans defense also shut him down, which that one was shocking to me. But now we saw a shift to where their targets, their touches were basically identical last week, which I don't think has happened before this week. I don't have the data to go all the way back. But Etienne's finally getting more involved in the pass game is the big thing to me. He finally had more targets than James Robinson did. And I think that's where his fantasy value is going to come from. And that's where he definitely gets the boost over James Robinson if you have both, or if you're looking to play one, not the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Call me a hot takes guy, and I know that Cody is not going to like this because he's a big fan of this guy, but I feel like at first I was on the James Robinson train, like, hey, start James. He's the guy. Like, let's go. Wait on ETN. If James Robinson's going to get less touches and it's just going to give ETN more touches, like, I'm out on both. Like, I'm sorry. I don't want either one of them then. I don't like ETN. I don't trust him yet. Yes, he's putting up some points, but he's only broken 10 one time. I mean, the dude had 10 carries and 5 targets in a game against the 31st ranked defense against running backs and still only put up 13. Like, he's just not thrilling me. He's not going to have a matchup as good as this past week often. And I feel like unless there's a James Robinson injury, Robinson's always going to be there to steal some touches. I don't feel like ETN is doing enough to really earn a starting spot for me unless you're in bye week hell and you desperately need to throw someone in there, then okay. But otherwise, I'm leaving ETN on the bench. I don't like him right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take either. Even I know we're in a league, a second league, not a league of record, where I just traded for Travis Etienne, but I'm kind of in the same boat. I think there's potential that he could still break out because he's still a young player. But it's not a guy that I'm thrilled about throwing in my lineup or I want to keep in my lineup or anything like that. It's more of just hoping on potential over anything else. So I'm agreeing with you, even though you said I might not, because I do like Travis Etienne
What's happening?
a lot. This is getting a weird podcast, but let's talk about our next matchup and a guy I really like, and I hate that he's on this team, and that is Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings get to play the Miami Dolphins. Justin Jefferson, he is definitely being started in your lineup. Let's make that clear. Dalvin Cook, the same thing. I think there's a great week to stream Kirk Cousins, and I think you can also play Adam Thielen. The Dolphins defense is just bad. They're missing Brian Flores. All the talk is on the offense, but their defense is all the way down like 28th, 29th, and 30th. That's how like they're ranking out in different statistical categories. So I like the Vikings this week, and I like the players in your fantasy lineups.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add on the Vikings side, so I can move us over to the Dolphins side where they're still dealing with so many injuries. Teddy Bridgewater was limited on Thursday. Tua was on the practice field, but I don't even know if they considered him limited. I guess they did consider him limited. But they're both still in concussion protocol, so it looks like there's still a good chance that Skylar Thompson, the rookie late round pick, is going to be their guy at quarterback again this week. which kind of makes it scary for all of their weapons. I mean, I don't think you're going to bench Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. They're too talented. They can turn one play into a touchdown. They can still give you a solid week. But it definitely does not look great with Skylar Thompson at quarterback.
Yeah, definitely not looking great at all. Look, George, you hit the nail on the head. You're starting Tyreek Hill. But yeah, honestly, the Dolphins in general are just sketchy, and the quarterback controversy is what's going to really throw us off because you feel comfortable with your Dolphins if Tua's in there. You feel okay with your Dolphins if Teddy's in there. You're not feeling good at all if Skylar Thompson's in there, and we honestly don't know who's going to be playing. So this is one of those situations where you really have to monitor it closely, and if you want someone to monitor it for you, so you can just do what we tell you, listen to us. We will update you as we get more on the injuries. Um, Cody, how do you feel about these Dolphins?
Yeah, I think what George said was accurate. You're going to play Tyreek Hill for sure. Jalen Waddle is a little bit more scary, but he can take 1 3-yard slant or 1 3-yard tunnel screen for a 75-yard touchdown. This is not a team you're probably going to see a lot on red zone live as they score, but they'll probably have to cut away and be like, oh, look at this touchdown we just missed over in Miami. Um, but I think also with that is the guy that George has been high on their hype train about how he's overtaking Chase Edmonds is Raheem Mostert, and he is now not practicing. This is from Wednesday. They didn't have their Thursday report officially out, so I can't promise that he didn't move to limited, but he didn't practice on Wednesday, and that stinks because he was starting to be a guy that you could trust, a guy that you could play. Now with a backup quarterback, I think even if he does play, I'm probably out on Mostert and Chase Edmonds just because I don't expect a lot of things to happen with this offense moving the ball.
Yeah, I'll have to defend myself slightly. Sorry,
Yeah,
Tyler.
go for it.
I do still think Mostert long term is the best running back in that offense if he can stay healthy. Of course, now we're dealing with another Raheem Mostert. He's not practicing again. The only reason he was never great in San Francisco is because he was always hurt. So I'm hoping this is just a minor bump in the road. But I still would not play him in this matchup this week regardless. But hold him. Do not just drop him. Just hold him.
Hey, you didn't even have to defend yourself. Cody agreed with you.
Yeah.
He was looking good. He just got hurt.
This podcast is going to be titled "The Boys Agree" because
That's weird.
It's just weird.
On the Dolphins side, also keep out if you are in a league with casual fans. Now, I say this every now and then. Like, if you're in a league with other Couch GMs, odds are they know their stuff. They're not going to be making moves. But if you're in a league with some casual fans, maybe they're not paying so much close attention. Maybe all they see is the numbers dipping, and you can go get some of these Dolphins receivers. You might be able to get Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill after this week if they do start putting up some duds because of the quarterback issues. And then once Tua comes back and he's fully healthy, you already have him ready to go. So if you're in with casuals, these are the kinds of targets you got to make. But I think that's enough on this game. Why don't we go ahead and move it on to the Cincinnati Bengals at the New Orleans Saints? Bengals side, T. Higgins. Last week, a lot of people were expecting a lot from him, and then he kind of just didn't show up. I honestly don't even know if he got hurt in the game or if he was hurt before the game and they just didn't give him designation.
He got hurt in the game, I believe.
It seemed like he never showed up.
I heard rumors that they said that they were going to hold him to a limited snap count, but never told anybody before the game. There's so many mixed reactions, it's hard to tell.
All I know is I was in 2 leagues against T. Higgins, and both people I was playing were very upset that he put up zeros. I only won one of them, so I guess it doesn't matter. But Higgins did not practice. Joe Mixon is going to be a start for you if you have Joe Burrow. He has kind of bounced back from his week 1 struggles, so he is a top 10 quarterback right now. You're probably starting him. And then at the receivers, you're starting Jamar Chase, and I think with Higgins not playing, you can probably start Tyler Boyd. Boyd has his flashes where he shows up some weeks, doesn't show up others, but if he is the set number 2 and there's no third guy stealing it from him, I think Boyd's a good play.
Yeah, I actually really like that suggestion, especially with Hayden Hurst, who had a really nice touchdown against the Ravens last week, is limited in practice this week. So maybe he's dealing a little bit banged up, and Boyd can do a little bit more work over the middle of the field where he's dominated back to when Andy Dalton was the quarterback for the Bengals. So especially in bye weeks with, Devontae Adams out, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I really do like the Tyler Boyd pickup, and he's a guy that you might even be able to peep your waivers and a last minute guy that because he's not that highly owned.
Very true. It could be a really good 1 week play and maybe even a couple of weeks during bye weeks if you find a good matchup for him. A little upset also that we missed the Hayden Hurst revenge game because that touchdown was nice and he put up a fairly solid week. But we'll move to the Saints side because I feel like this might be where we finally have a disagreement. Jameis Winston was limited participant in practice. He could return this week. If he returns this week, I think I'm out on Taysom Hill for this week, even on the dartboard. Is someone finally going to disagree with somebody on this podcast?
I'm not answering.
You said you're
Because
out
I
on
agree.
Taysom Hill?
I'm out on Taysom Hill.
I'm out on
if
Taysom
Winston
Hill based
plays,
on
I'm out on
probability.
Taysom Hill.
He had 4 touchdowns last week. There's going to be so many people chasing points, and I understand it. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of disappointed fantasy players come Monday morning because he's going to regress a little bit. They're going to be chasing those 4 points. So I'm out based on, if you want to call that a superstition, if you want to call it on my gut. And I think we even said it, like we like him less when Jameis Winston is back in the lineup compared to Andy Dalton because we think there'll be less opportunities for him to play, quote unquote, quarterback in the wild cards lineup.
All right, finally, I'll disagree. I'm in on Taysom Hill. And here's my reasoning. If you own Taysom Hill and you're considering starting him at tight end, odds are you don't have Travis Kelce, you don't have Mark Andrews, you don't have George Kittle. Odds are you're one of the people that have been trying to find a good tight end, or odds are you're a guy with TJ Hawkinson, or who's the other big one this week? Darren Waller. Odds are you're a guy that had one of them. And if you are in that kind of position where you have other sketchy tight ends, like, you could do worse than Taysom Hill. I mean, look, he's going to be touchdown dependent. He's not going to get the volume, but when they get to the red zone, he steals all the touchdowns for no reason. It's very frustrating. It's making Alvin Kamara lose a lot of value because of it, but he's touchdown dependent, but he does have a good chance of getting that touchdown. You'd name me another tight end that you're throwing in there that you feel more confident with. I mean, one of the biggest streaming options of the last few weeks has been Jets tight end Tyler Conklin. And right as everybody picked him up and started him because they were like, finally, this guy's getting points. We have a tight end we can play. He put up a big old goose egg for a lot of people that started him and set you right back. I don't think the options out there are that fantastic. So if you're looking at Taysom Hill, you probably do need to start him.
But you also just made my point.
Fair assessment.
A little bit too. Everyone was like, okay, we can finally play Tyler Conklin. Okay, now we can finally play Taysom Hill. So that's the superstition aspect of it. But to your point about there's not a lot out there. I saw a quote on, it wasn't a full-on meme, but it was just on Twitter. Someone said you either have Travis Kelce or a tight end that you hope to get 5 points. And I was like, that is the most accurate statement in fantasy football right now.
Once you add in Mark Andrews too.
That was not the tweet, but I understand what you're saying.
It's Kelce and Andrews in that. And other than that, yeah, I totally agree. And it is just touchdown dependency. So if you're going to say that I believe Taysom Hill has a better chance to get a touchdown than, like, I don't know, Irv Smith, Hayden Hurst, I don't know, something like that, then yeah, maybe, sure, go ahead, throw it out there. But do not expect 30. Expect 2 or expect 10. That's the way I'm looking at it. So yeah, I guess I am somewhere in the middle, but I'm still staying away from him personally. And then it also doesn't help, I guess, that every single wide receiver on the Saints is injured. Michael Thomas still did not practice. Jarvis Landry did not practice. Chris Olave went from a did not practice to a limited. The fact that Olave did that means that he's going further into concussion protocol, and he probably has a chance to go this week. The other two not looking as great. I hope Olave goes and the other two don't, because he's a slam dunk play in that situation. He's probably a play regardless of them as being in. But
yeah, I think he's a slam dunk play no matter what at this point. The dude's been absolutely consistent with no matter who his quarterback is. He's been a baller.
Yeah, those.
But there's no other wide receivers I'm touching other than Olave in that pace.
Yeah, and I wouldn't play Jameis Winston either if he's back. I don't like him as a streaming option this week. But let's talk about the next matchup, the team that the Bengals played last Sunday night, and that's the Baltimore Ravens as they head to face the New York Giants coming off a big win in London. On the Ravens side, the only name is Bateman is still dealing with injury. He's still DNP. So I think the Ravens are pretty simple. Lamar in your lineup, J.K. Dobbins, borderline RB2, might squeak in a couple touchdowns. and then Mark Andrews. If you want to take a flyer on Devin Duvernay, feel free. That is not for me.
Yep.
I am taking a flyer on Duvernay if Bateman doesn't go. That's where I'm at. If Bateman goes, not touching him.
All right, and then on the Giants side.
I'm with Cody on this one. Yep.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead. Giants sideline.
Yeah, Giants, another one. Very simple. You're playing Saquon Barkley. All the other wide receivers are hurt.
Yep.
I mean, Saquon's even hurt now.
I'll say it again like last week. Yes. I'll say it again like last week. Wan'Dale Robinson, someone you're keeping an eye on as a potential waiver rush next week if he does happen to play and play well. But just because he's that glimmer of hope is you hope somebody's going to break out in that Giants wide receiver room. But you can't be like, I'm going to start him because he's going to. Don't do that.
All right.
Yep. Barkley or bust. That's it.
Barkley or bust.
Barkley or bust. Let's go to another team that's probably pretty easy to decide. And that's the Pittsburgh Steelers as they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On the Steelers.
The matchup's prime here, yeah.
I mean, for me, Deontay's banged up. Freiermuth is banged up. I'm playing Freiermuth. I think he could be a solid tight end this week. The one area where the Buccaneers are vulnerable is on defense is to the tight end position, at least in fantasy football. So I do like Freiermuth if he goes. But I will say I'm going to bench Najee Harris. I know that's going to be a very hard thing to do, but the Buccaneers are back to being the number one team against the running backs in fantasy. The Steelers can't do anything. Kenny Pickett has more picks already. Well, he's just not playing well. The Steelers aren't playing well. So I'm Freiermuth, and I guess Deontay Johnson if I had to pick a wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree.
Man, I was gonna
say it. I was gonna say bench Najee Harris, and every week I've been like, I don't like Najee Harris, and they're like, well, Najee's better than you think. Nope, finally, we all are in agreement. Bench Najee this week. Best run defense. Najee's been underwhelming. Pittsburgh Steelers have been even more underwhelming. I agree. I don't love starting Deontay if you don't have to. If you can bench Deontay, if you have other options, try to throw somebody else in there. But obviously, I know what it's like to have a bunch of injuries, underperformers, everything. So,
do either of you like Pickens more than Deontay Johnson now that Kenny Pickett's the starter?
Not yet.
They're right here. Like, they're both like basically tied for me. So I'm trying not to play either, but I could definitely make an argument to starting Pickens over Johnson. The only thing I want to say is if you have any questions about should I play this running back over Najee Harris, definitely let us know. Send us a message, comment on our post here, because I mean the bye weeks, it means you're missing Dameon Pierce, you're missing DeAndre Swift, you're missing Josh Jacobs, you're missing Derrick Henry. Like, it's hard for us to say don't play Najee Harris when the 4 of the top 10, top 20 running backs right now are on bye. But it's just I expect him to put up 5.
Is a week without Derrick Henry even football?
Yes.
I shouldn't have even mentioned it. I regret even saying it now.
It's the best week of football.
Whoa.
I can't even agree with that because I do enjoy watching.
I had to draw a line in the sand and say, we have to disagree. We have to butt heads. And I can't even say it with a straight face. That's the problem.
Thank you. It's better than watching the Packers play. I mean, a bye week for the Packers would be so much better. Instead of having to listen to commentators for 3 hours go, Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time as he overthrows his receivers and loses again. Yeah, I don't need to see that again.
We're talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now and the GOAT, Tom Brady, who I think is a decent play here this week at quarterback. And their wide receivers are still an absolute mess. I mean, Mike Evans is good to go. Julio Jones still did not practice. Chris Godwin went from a limited participant who did not practice, but it is rest, so he probably is going to be okay. Russell Gage was a limited participant in practice. I mean, a lot of these guys are probably going to go this time. Like, I think they're starting to get past the injury bug at wide receiver, but they're still all banged up.
Yeah, but so Mike Evans, he's definitely in your lineup. That's not even a question.
Yeah.
But I think no matter which one goes, whether it's Russell Gage, Chris Godwin, or both, they're both startable offenses last week. You have to get out of the mindset that the Steelers are an elite off defense. They're not. We saw Gabe Davis had 3 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying either of these guys are going to do it, but they're going to give up points in the passing game. Minkah Fitzpatrick is dealing with some injuries as well on the back end, and he's probably their best secondary player. So I hope if if they go, it just adds more mouths to feed. So it might not be as, huge a week for a guy like Mike Evans, or this could be his 3-touchdown game because he has 1 or 2 of those every year. But I like Russell Gage as a flex start this week if you're missing some guys and he's able to go.
Dude, I wish Chris Godwin could just stay healthy. That dude is so good at football. He's honestly really good. He's fun to have in fantasy. And when he is fully healthy for a game, he almost always just blows up. It sucks that he's hurt every year. I wish he was just healthy. I'd love to see what he could do.
I'm not going to lie. This is kind of off topic, but it's on topic. But the slider in Madden that you can turn off injuries? I wish there was a real life of that for the NFL because it sucks when these top players have either get hurt for all season, which is terrible. And even these nagging injuries where there's just so much hope, oh, this is going to be their week. And it's not, or, they don't quite make it back or they re-aggravate it mid-game. So injuries are by far the worst part of football. Closely behind that is roughing the passer.
And third would be running back by committee.
Yes.
True.
That's a
for
great
fantasy
point.
anyway.
Hashtag facts.
But that is it for the 1 o'clock games. Let's go ahead and move on to the 4 o'clock games, which we do have one big game in this window, but we'll get to that last. So we'll start it with the Carolina Panthers at the Los Angeles Rams. The Panthers are kind of looking at sell mode. We don't have Baker. He's not going to be playing. Most likely it will be PJ Walker is expected to start. DJ Moore was a full participant. Man, you start Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but I don't think you start anybody else.
Nope. I don't think you do either.
No, I mean, I honestly could see this game being 9-6, especially if we'll switch to the Rams really quick. Cooper Kupp did not practice. If there's any chance that Cooper Kupp does not go, definitely
Ben
9-6.
Skoranek is getting 40 points.
9-6. I don't even think Skoranek is going to be fantasy relevant, even if he is wide receiver 1. And we all, I think, are on the bandwagon of Allen Robinson's washed. So,
look, if Cooper Kupp doesn't play, but he still shows up to the stadium and he's just on the sideline watching, you're going to see a lot of Matt Stafford passes to the sideline. He throws out of bounds again because he can't throw to anybody else but Cooper Kupp.
So, okay, I'm going to disagree, make you guys disagree with me for one thing. I don't think Allen Robinson is washed. I think the Rams' offensive line is awful and doesn't give any time, and all the first reads are to Cooper Kupp. So I don't think he's washed in terms of playing, but he's definitely not worth starting. So we agree on that. But if they could fix that offensive line, I do think we could see some value in Allen Robinson. But that is a huge if the way they have played the last few weeks.
And I guess I would also be, I have to mention that Tyler Higbee is approaching top 12 every week tight end category just because of how many targets and catches he's getting every week. Like last week, he turned 7 catches into 46 yards, didn't score a touchdown. Not exactly pretty, but 7 catches, 10 targets. He's getting almost 10 targets every single week. If there's anybody on that team that is not Cooper Kupp that's getting targets, it's him.
With the same amount of targets, Ben Skoranek has 6 more catches and almost 80 more yards than Allen Robinson. I'm not going to go out here and just bash Ben Skoranek, but we're not going to go out here and be like he's, an elite receiver. He's this great receiver. He's not on the same level that we talked about Allen Robinson coming into the season. So if Ben Skoranek is performing at the same level or better than Robinson, I think he's washed. So that's just my opinion.
My only counter argument too, and we're running long, so I'll keep it short, is what they asked for Allen Robinson to do and what his targets are compared to what Ben Skoranek's are. I think if you look at the game from how they're used are different. But it's a valid argument. I just think that when they go to Allen Robinson, it is in the red zone or it's jump balls, and they're on the plays that he's open, it goes to Cooper Kupp because he's the first read. That's at least what I've seen in the couple games.
Got it. So he's playing the role of a tight end, which is usually what wide receivers do when they're washed and can't run anymore. Got it. Okay. So you made my argument.
Not say he's playing the role of a tight end.
Anybody else from this matchup that we want to mention?
If there's going to be a Cam Akers breakout game, there's not many better times than this one for there to be a thing. He got all of the running back carries last week. Darrell Henderson only had targets, did not carry the ball. The Panthers defense is not great. I don't even know if I'm confident enough to say play Cam Akers, but if there's going to be a Cam Akers game, I think it's this week.
Look, you mentioned all the running backs that are on bye this week, so the odds are if you have one of those guys, you're probably playing Cam Akers.
It's true.
I don't really like running backs this year. I don't like
stink.
I've been saying that for 3 weeks now. Like, I wouldn't play this guy, but I wouldn't play this guy, and then I get to the end of the show, and I'm like, well, I just told everyone not to play any running backs. So when are we starting that 1 quarterback 5 flex league? Let's get those started.
No.
I mean, we're in some dynasty leagues where you don't have to play running backs, and I feel like the only running backs that I've played are like Joe Mixon, kind of. I have a league where I have Miles Sanders. He's been one of the better backs, and even that's not exciting. Like it, I like those leagues where you don't play running backs, actually, especially this year.
Well, if we're talking about running backs, let's go on to a matchup that has some interesting ones. We have the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. We have James Conner, who has been a startable running back this year, but Cody has been saying bench Conner almost every week, does not trust him. And then on the other side, you have the Seattle Seahawks, who just lost Rashad Penny, and they got Kenneth Walker, the rookie, taking over. Are we trusting Walker right away? Are we trusting Conner? Are you starting either of these running backs?
I'm still on the boat that Conner's not going to play. Same with Williams. They're both did not practice so far. So, Benjamin breakout game right here. He actually is one of my streamer starts if both of those guys don't go. The Seahawks their defense is turnstiles. Their defense is almost as bad as the Lions.
All right, George. Benjamin or Cam Akers?
Benjamin. If Conner and Williams don't go.
Interesting.
I would go with Cam Akers. But that's just me. It's scary starting Benjamin. But I understand, like, if they're not going to go, you might have to throw him out there. And it's not a bad guy that might even still be available on the waivers, or a guy you could pick up and put right in your matchup.
George, Benjamin or Najee Harris?
That's a good one.
The fact that that's a question is beyond sad.
It is actually hilarious. I guess I have to say Najee, but dang, that's tough.
George, just say like you want to.
All right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Wow.
I have another one.
The fact that that's a question.
I'm done.
No, I mean, I'm okay with hearing it, but I can talk Seahawks too, because I think I'm trusting Ken Walker right off the bat. He had a good second half last week. He's been getting a couple carries, so he's kind of gotten up to speed. And I'm not really someone who's super worried about DJ Dallas. I don't think that's a crazy outburst take either. So I'm in on Ken Walker to start off.
All right. You brought up DJ Dallas, so I'm going to share something I heard on another podcast. It was the Fantasy Footballers podcast. Great show. If you don't listen to them, you're missing out on a lot of great fantasy insight. But they brought up not starting DJ Dallas, but if you're in, a DFS lineup, or if you're looking for a cheap running back, Pete Carroll likes running back by committees. And Penny's not there. Travis Homer is not expected to play. And we've seen DJ Dallas be productive in the past. Kenneth Walker is dealing with a little bit of an injury. So don't be surprised if you wake, and it's more of a 50-50 with Walker and DJ Dallas. So not a guy like I'm running out to pick up, or it is the 4:00 window, so you might want to pick him up right before the game time and see what happens if you have an extra roster spot and try to get ahead of the waivers. But he's an interesting name, and I thought it was a very interesting point that he might be like a DFS steal for what his value is and the other people you can get around him, and then still have a productive day.
All right, well, I think we talked enough about the running backs in this matchup. Cardinals side of the ball, are we starting Zach Ertz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown?
Yeah.
Kyler Murray?
Yep.
Cody, you got to answer faster. We're running long.
I actually have Mark. I have Hollywood Brown on the sit list, so I have to agree with. I said sit him.
No,
so.
Time out. Why?
Because it's a divisional matchup, and you mentioned turnstiles, but the Seattle Seahawks are the number 4 defense against fantasy wide receivers.
I guess the running backs just must be cooking them so much that must be part of the case. But I'm in on Rondale Moore also on top of Hollywood. I'm going to just turn my head, try to get us moving a little faster here. But I guess I could see your argument.
I know we are running long, so I probably shouldn't ask these kinds of questions, but I'm going to ask anyway because it's who I am. We just said
It's
that
also our
they're the
show. We
number
can do
4
whatever we want.
defense. I mean, that's fair. You said that the number 4 defense against the wide receiver. And we look at those types of stats all the time. We also have said numerous times how different divisional games play. How randomly the Jags will come out and beat the Colts every year because it's a divisional game and it doesn't make sense. How much do you buy into these stats against positions for divisional games? Do you still buy into it just as much, or is it a little bit of a wild card?
I think I still look at them, but when I think divisional, I think closer matchups than, if one team's really good, one team's really bad, I still think it's going to be a closer matchup. So I do think, this could be a week that Marquise Brown struggled. Now, don't get me wrong, he's had at least 10 targets in every game since week 2. So it is not like by any stretch of the mean to think that I could be completely wrong about starting him. He's currently wide receiver 6 on the season, but it's divisional. They're a top team against fantasy wide receivers, only giving up about 27, 28 points to every receiver on the roster in terms of fantasy. So there's not a lot of opportunity. But to your question, divisional, I think the games are going to be closer. So even if it is a really good matchup, I might take it a step back. And in this case, it just piles on that it's divisional and not a great matchup.
I'm also going to call that it might be a bit of a mirage due to their matchups so far. They played the Broncos, who are a joke. They played the 49ers, who are a run-first team. They played the Falcons, who have Marcus Mariota. They can only pass the ball so efficiently. The Lions cooked them with wide receivers. They had almost 400 yards passing. And then they played the Saints, who started Andy Dalton.
That is valid as well.
I also love how you tiptoed around bashing Mariota when you could have easily been like, Mariota, garbage. Like, thank you for tiptoeing around him.
I'm a fan of Mariota, but we got to say that that does happen to limit their pass game.
On the Seahawks side of the ball, are you starting DK Metcalf?
Yeah.
Cody, you're just not answering.
Oh, I thought I said yes. In my head, I definitely responded.
This is a mess now. We have come
This
off
is
the
what we
rails.
deal with Cody on a daily basis. Anybody out there that's wondering.
For sure.
Tyler Lockett. I know
yes.
every week we want to say no, but every week Tyler Lockett does well. Are we starting him now?
I'm going to keep saying no.
I'm saying yes.
I'm saying yes. I'm yes on Lockett. Gerald Everett. Are we doing Will Dissly?
I like Will Dissly if I'm going to pick one.
Will Dissly. Yeah.
Are we starting Will Dissly?
He's on the dartboard.
Throw him on the dartboard.
I play him over Kyle Pitts, which is kind of crazy.
All right, so finally, the guy that is weird for me to throw out here, quarterback streamer of the week. Are we starting Geno Smith?
Yes.
If don't force him in your lineup, don't play him over those top 8 quarterbacks. But yeah, I like him as a streamer.
Right, the Cardinals are averaging 20 points to quarterbacks this season, so yes.
Man, I'll take 18 to 20 out of Geno Smith. Yeah.
Well, that's enough for that matchup. Let's move on to the final 4:00 game. I highlighted a little bit earlier. It's the most exciting game of the week. Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. Highlights or flashbacks to the Rams and Chiefs of old. Greatest game ever. Potentially here, but I mean, it's called the rematch. It's going to be an exciting game. Hopefully it doesn't end because of a coin flip. We'll find out. But let's talk fantasy. I want to start with Kansas City Chiefs because I've been wanting to ask this question since the beginning of the podcast. Streaming option, flex option, not loving him. How are we feeling about Juju Smith-Schuster moving forward? Now, before you just go ahead and laugh, I understand that he has not been putting up points, but this man has seen 8 targets per game every single game except one. If you're seeing 8 targets on a weekly basis with Patrick Mahomes thrown to you, how long do you think you're going to go without seeing points? Do we like him moving forward at all or no?
Yeah, I like him moving forward, but not this matchup.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns where I said about 2 weeks ago, where it's all these Chiefs receivers, it's going to kind of pass around. So you don't really want to start any of them because of the risk. But Juju's the guy who's getting the most consistent looks. In good matchups, I'll throw him out there and hope it happens to be a Juju week, but I'm not touching it against Buffalo.
All right, so let's go ahead and highlight the other Chiefs. Obviously, if you have Travis Kelce, you're starting him. If you have Patrick Mahomes, you are starting him.
I'm just kidding.
Really?
This
Really?
is a
Like,
joke.
I don't care what the matchup is. If you have Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce, you're playing.
Yes.
CEH, tough defense. Are we playing CEH this matchup?
Nope. Here we are again. Another running back.
I don't see how many. Another running back he says you can't start just because he hates running backs. I don't see with the buys and the injuries how you can bench CEH with his production so far.
Yeah, it depends on who you have. If you're curious or questioning it, obviously send it out to us. We'll tell you who to start.
So George,
any other Chiefs receivers?
Oh, good. He's going to throw me a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cody, you first.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's coming off of a bad week, who faces a top 10 defense against running backs, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or your guy, Benjamin.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay. I mean, if you're going to play over Najee Harris, don't act like it's a bad question to ask why you wouldn't play him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Najee Harris, who's gotten 10 points or less pretty much every single week. I think he had 2 weeks of 11. And he's been like 5 point a week guy, or a guy who on an explosive offense is going to turnstile defense. Like, come on.
Okay. All right. This is a crazy podcast. Is there any other Chiefs receivers that you are starting in this matchup other than potentially Juju?
Which
obviously
this is extremely wild because we're expecting a shootout, correct? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
But we're all like, do I want to play Juju? I'm not feeling it. Not feeling MVS. Not feeling like. It's wild how the Chiefs have there's not a wide receiver we want to play in a game we think that they could put up 40 points.
Well, if we're being honest, outside of Tyreek Hill, how did we feel last year? Like, obviously, if they're putting up 40 points a game, it's not all going to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. The receivers always put up points, but we didn't know if it was Sammy Watkins. We didn't know if it was Mecole Hardman. We didn't know if it was Byron Pringle. Like, you never know. And that's how the Chiefs are. Like, shout out to Andy Reid for getting all of these guys involved and getting all of them to be sneaky good. And no matter who you plan for, somebody else is going to pop off. So, good by the Chiefs to do that. But yeah, I mean, you make a great point. It's a shootout, and we don't have a receiver that we like that much. But let's go ahead and move on.
Last week they put up 30 points, which I mean could be comparable to what they do this week. And MVS was the leader, had 90 yards. Mecole Hardman 73, but all the points still went to Travis Kelce because he got 4 touchdowns. Like, there's still a good chance that you're gonna get a decent. Oh, this guy got 10, but because Travis Kelce and maybe even CEH get all the touchdowns, it's not gonna matter if you play anybody else. They're not gonna really do.
You had to throw CEH in there just because of our debate. I love it.
I mean, Kelsey's a god.
If you're talking about who's gotten these touchdowns so far this year, it's all been Travis Kelce or CEH. I'll make a bet that 80% of their touchdown shares them two alone.
I mean, yeah, Kelce is a god among men, and he is going to keep feasting because he's so good. But the issue is, at some point, people are going to find a way to take Travis Kelce out of the game. And at that point, those receivers are going to absolutely dominate because it's going to take a lot to take Kelce out. But we need to keep this moving. Let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen starting. Stephon Diggs, you're starting. Dawson Knox has been dropped in a lot of leagues, so I don't even know if he's on the tight end dartboard anymore. But is there any other Bills outside of those? That's true too. I mean, Gabriel Davis had a lot of yards and touchdowns last week, but the issue is he only had 3 catches. He is getting, stats, but he's not getting the volume. Isaiah McKenzie has been getting more of the volume, but not as much of the stats. Is there which other Bills receiver would you start, if any?
Gabe Davis.
He
lit up the
Chiefs.
Chiefs
Isaiah McKenzie at all?
a couple months ago in a game that they lost, but I like Gabe Davis.
Mm-hmm. It's just he's a big play threat, but I think at the same time he's one of those few big play threats that has the target share that he's going to have a solid week if he doesn't explode. But I know you're going to ask anybody else on the team. I'm still on starting Devin Singletary in this because the Chiefs defense not fantastic, and I know Singletary kind of disappointed last week because they got up a bazillion points and just didn't really use him. But in close games, he's shown that they've shown they want to use Devin Singletary, and he's getting the bulk of the carries out of that backfield.
I just have a feeling that this game is going to turn into me and Cody playing Madden, where the game ends 50-50, and we both run the ball on our first drive, and we're like, wow, we're averaging like 6.5 yards a carry. This run is working. And then we absolutely abandon it because the other team started throwing the ball and getting yards quick. I got to throw the ball and get yards quick. And anytime you see a shootout, a lot of times they do kind of abandon the run for no reason. Or they'll run it once per drive and like, good enough, throw the ball. We have Josh Allen. We have Patrick Mahomes. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of move away from the run, but that's also me talking about Madden instead of using football knowledge.
I think me and you should play this game. I'll be the Bills, you be the Chiefs. Or if you want the Bills, and we'll just stream it on Twitch. I think that's what we should do.
There you go. Yeah.
All right.
Little Madden preview. But let's preview Sunday Night Football.
All right,
we still got 2 more games.
Yeah. Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles. This should be a slugfest of a game. I'll start on the Eagles side. I'll try to go through it really quick. A.J. Brown was a limited participant in practice on Thursday. He should be good to go, so all the weapons are going to go for Philly. You're definitely starting Jalen Hurts. Miles Sanders, I think, is pretty much an every week starter at this point. A.J. Brown, you're going to go. Devontae Smith, I'm a little bit worried about, just because I think points are going to be a little bit more of a premium than they have been in most games for the Eagles. So I think I'm going to lean towards A.J. Brown and maybe just have like a borderline flex option for a Devontae Smith, and then Dallas Goedert's in your lineup every week at tight end. I think that's pretty simple there.
Okay, here we go again. I don't like Miles Sanders this week. I don't know who playing at running back because there's not a lot of guys I like. But you mentioned it. Points are going to be at a premium. The Cowboys have not allowed 2 touchdowns in a single game all season. They've allowed 1, but not 2. They're a top 5 defense against the run. It's divisional. It's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be a slugfest, like George mentioned. I don't think that, and we're still expecting Cooper Rush. So I don't think that this is going to be, a big shootout that we might have seen if Dak was there. I think it's going to be a game that they both run the ball, eat some clock. So yeah, I don't really like Devontae Smith either. And Miles Sanders is another running back. You're probably going to have to play him because there's so many running backs out. Like I'll play him over Eno Benjamin. I'd play him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yep.
But it's just an interesting name. If you're somehow lucky enough that you got some other guys that aren't on bye and you can pivot to some other wide receiver options, I might do it this week.
All right. Fair enough. I do want to say it's kind of funny that, George was over at my house this week and I told him, like, you need to watch out for A.J. Brown because every year he has the one game where he has a big drop. And as soon as he has that big drop, he just disappears for a little while. And George was like, I don't know if I see that. And then this week he was killing it in the first quarter and then had one big drop on 3rd down and literally disappeared the entire rest of the game. Was non-existent. So very fitting timing there. But he should bounce back. He should be fine. Dallas Cowboys, I mean, Cody, I'll ask you the same question as you kind of asked me earlier. These receivers, do you like them more or less when Dak Prescott replaces Cooper Rush?
I mean, Cooper Rush has done some great things with the Cowboys, but I'm going to say I like them more with Dak, but not so much the receivers. The guy that I'm really excited for Dak to come back is tight end Dalton Schultz. He's still limited in practice, dealing with some injuries. He's been really bad in terms of fantasy with Cooper Rush. I mentioned it last week, but he saw a bunch of targets with Dak Prescott. So once he's good to go and Dak's good to go, I like Dalton Schultz back being like a prime tight end candidate. So if you've had him and you still hold him on, I wouldn't cut him just yet. But in this matchup with most likely Cooper Rush, I wouldn't play Dalton Schultz.
Is CD Lamb someone that's just kind of in your lineup because you have to? Or is that also like I don't know if I'd play him with Cooper Rush because I think I'm kind of leaning towards that.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of like you have to. The guy that I think is the most interesting because it's a really good matchup in terms of defense, but Tony Pollard, he's actually looked pretty good. He's had some big plays. But he's a backup. Like they're still trying to work in Zeke. Zeke's still getting his. He's not doing much with it, but he's still getting his.
Yeah.
But like Tony Pollard is like an interesting flex name, especially with all these buys.
Cody, this week, Tony Pollard, AJ Dillon.
this week, Tony Pollard or A.J. Dillon. I am talking very slow to stall because that is a very tough one. I'm gonna say Tony Pollard. I think it's a big Aaron Jones week. This could be like Aaron Jones' 3-touchdown game. I could see that. But hold on to A.J. Dillon. He's still getting, heavily used, and he only has 1 touchdown so far in the season. We talked about Nick Chubb at the very beginning of this podcast. If you made it, thank you. But there's going to be some positive regret, or not positive. I don't even know what the right word would be, but positive non-regression for touchdowns for A.J. Dillon coming up. So stop laughing at me and figure out what the word is supposed to be.
I'm going to let you go with that one. I actually understood you, and that was not
it's
the right way to put it.
regression, it's progression.
Hey, you got it. All right. We got to move on to Monday Night Football so we can wrap this thing up. Denver Broncos traveling to the Los Angeles Chargers, and I'll start with the Broncos because I think...
Stop putting the Broncos on prime time. Sorry.
Like we said earlier this week, this is there's only one more primetime game for the Broncos the rest of the season after this. So we just have to get through this week, and then we're almost done. Russell Wilson, Melvin Gordon, Mike Boone, all limited participants in practice. They all probably will go. Melvin Gordon, I think, has got to be in your lineup getting all of this volume. And I think you're probably playing Cortland Sutton because he's the one wide receiver who's been okay through everything. But everyone else on that team, including Russell Wilson, I am avoiding because I am not going to go through that headache again of trying to watch these guys on primetime win me a game when they just can't do it.
All right, guys, I got a fan question for you that I was told earlier. Are you ready?
Okay.
Would you drop Russell Wilson to pick up Kirk Cousins?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably this week, especially because I think Kirk
Russell
is
Wilson is
streamer.
Quarterback 15 on the season, which seems high. And Kirk Cousins is quarterback 12 on the season. But Kirk Cousins gets the number 30th ranked Miami Dolphins, where Russell Wilson has the 20th ranked Los Angeles Chargers. So they're both good matchups. But I would pick up Kirk Cousins this week.
And drop Russell Wilson. Let the whole world be able to claim the man who's cooking.
He's not cooking with gas. He's cooking with something that's not working.
Nice, George.
Yeah. You had a
Charger
softball
side.
and you whiffed.
Yep.
George, talk about your favorite team, though. We got to talk about that team.
All right, Los Angeles Chargers, my second favorite team. I think you're starting all the usual suspects here, including maybe Keenan Allen, who is a limited participant and is expected to be back. Now, I get it. It's sketchy. This is a Monday night game. Hopefully, we'll hear a little bit more before Sunday, but it is definitely trending towards Keenan Allen being back this week, and you can put him back in your lineup. Keep an eye on our Twitter. We'll keep you up to date if anything changes on that. I think Mike Williams is still a solid play in this. I still think the Chargers have some points to grab. Austin Eckler has finally turned it back on, and you're starting Justin Herbert. Am I missing anybody there?
No, but I'm just going to... We can finally disagree. We think of the Denver Broncos as this bad team, like they're really not moving, but their defense is playing at an elite level. They are ranked 4th overall in defense, number 2 against fantasy wide receivers. So I probably it's the Chargers, it's divisional, it's another game. We talked about it. We expect it to be closer than it probably will be. So I don't really like Mike Williams this week. That's another big name. I know we're getting to the point where you like a lot of, and the same reason that unless we hear something, I'm not even gonna say that I don't like Keenan Allen this week either, because we're probably not going to get enough information, and the hamstring scares me. He's already re-aggravated once on the practice field, so he's a guy that I might want to see it, and we've seen it before with Keenan Allen, like on a primetime game. Oh, he's expected to play, and then he runs 10 routes, and everyone's like, I wish they would have said something different. Like, we've literally seen this before with Keenan Allen. So he's a guy I'm definitely a lot more scared of than Mike Williams. But I think if for some reason you have better options, if you got Chris Olave late and you can bench Mike Williams to play Chris Olave, I absolutely would do that.
Okay, so this podcast, we have all agreed with each other, and in the last 10 minutes, you've gotten to hear Cody say bench A.J. Dillon, bench Mike Williams, his 2 favorite players. I don't know what's happening anymore. This is a weird podcast in general. I have nothing
So-
more to say about these games.
I do have one more thing to say about this Chargers game, just in case you want to handcuff yourself if you're someone who has to play Keenan Allen. Josh Palmer's probably your best option off the waiver wire, and it's not pretty. But if you have to like hope that somebody gets points, it's like Mike Williams is second in the pecking order, and then it's Josh Palmer. So then it's just in case you want to go out there and handcuff yourself.
I'm sorry, I do actually have to ask you one question. I need to backtrack a little bit because the fans out there need to know. If you are a person that has Dak Prescott on your team, and you are planning for him to play,
Don't.
I'm just saying, like, would
Okay,
you rather
yeah.
drop someone decent and pick up a backup quarterback and just start him and not even worry about Dak? Do you put Dak in your lineup knowing that Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert are owned most places? So if he doesn't play, you're kind of screwed. What are you doing with Dak? How are you handling him this week?
I'm trying.
Like I said, I'm literally going to play it like he's not going to play. And I would actually, rather than just sit on him for a week against an Eagles defense in that game, we said that points could be at a premium, and go out there and get like a Geno Smith, and plays beforehand. Like, I don't think there's any options for you to go back and be like, oh no, Dak's not playing. Because if you get stuck with Cooper Rush, I think you're in trouble.
Yeah, I definitely think that too. I would try to find somebody else, but I wouldn't cut Dak because he sounds close,
Yeah.
and he gets the Lions next week. So I would try to find another way to play. Geno Smith is a great example. So I would try to cut someone else, and not rely on Dak this week, even if he is named the starter. Like, it's a really tough matchup.
All right.
But all right, boys, that was a long episode. So anyone that made it all the way through, words cannot express how much we appreciate you listening. Hopefully you had a lot of fun. This is probably one of my favorite podcasts we've done in a while. I felt like there was some good conversation, a lot of good back and forth, and way too much agreeing. But we do really appreciate you guys listening, and as always, thanks.
And obviously, I'm always out here looking for a fight, and I'm not really sure why, but every podcast I'm ready to throw down with Cody. I'm ready to talk smack on George. But look, if you're ready to throw down with us and get in a little battle about some football players, maybe you disagreed with one of our opinions, maybe you got some hot takes of your own, please let us know. We love to have those little battles. Or if you just have any questions like, hey, who should I start this week? Let us know. We would love to answer your questions. We want to help you win a championship. And this podcast is so much more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is Tyler, and thank you all one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. For Cody Roadcap and Tyler Snyder, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.